You're listening to Strange by Nature, your guide to the strange, weird, unbelievable, and improbable wonders of the natural world.
Hello everyone, thanks for being here today. I am Kirk Mona and I am joined today by Rachel Ginza and Victoria Thompson. We are all professional naturalists who together have scoured the world for weird and wonderful wonders just to please your mammalian brain's desire for novelty. Isn't that nice? Let's do this.
Welcome back to the show. Kirk, you're with me this week?
I sure am. Good to be here.
Yeah! This particular topic has been on my list for a while. I get to have it started this week, so I'm just rolling right in.
Do it.
So I'm really excited that we actually get to do this today.
Oh.
Kirk, there are some things, you and I have had this discussion before. There are some things that I have a deep abiding respect for, like animals and concepts and things like that I have a deep abiding respect for, but don't want to be near.
Yes. Oh, yes. Absolutely.
Clowns are one of those things. Good for folks who can do it.
Not where I thought you were going to go for your first example.
That's fair.
You have a deep respect for clowns, but don't want to be anywhere near them?
That's more of that's bordering on fear. I'm not going to lie. I'm not a huge fan of clowns, but we have a mutual friend who really loves clowns. So good for her. One of those other objects or other things is jellyfish. I respect them. I respect where they are and what they do.
You don't want to go swimming with them? Yep.
Absolutely not. I don't even really like sometimes in aquariums you have the opportunity to touch the tops of moon jellyfish or whatever. Yeah. I don't like it.
That's totally fair.
Another one of those particular critters that I have a deep abiding respect for, but don't want to be anywhere near them, lionfish.
Okay. All right.
It's just one of those things that look cool, are really popular in the aquarium industry and as pets and things. I don't understand.
They are a deeply problematic animal, but yes.
They are very problematic, and
we haven't talked about those
on
the show.
I don't want to touch them. And we haven't talked about them, so we're going to talk about lionfish.
We are talking. Okay, great.
We're going to talk about lionfish.
When you said lionfish, I'm like, we should talk about lionfish. And you're
right?
going to, so
how
perfect.
Have we not? It was very much one of those. I saw, I'm like, we haven't talked about this. We have to at some point because lionfish are absolutely wild, but at the same time, so problematic.
Yeah.
Look. I enjoy them in their natural habitat in the Indo-Pacific, and I think that they can be really great over there. They're causing so many problems, Kirk.
Yeah, tell us about it.
Yeah. All right. So, again, we don't want to touch lionfish, and it's for a really good reason. So, like I was saying, lionfish are native to the Indo-Pacific region of the Pacific Ocean. So think Indonesia, warm coastal-ish waters where there's lots of coral reefs and things like that. They've been found up to 1,000 feet deep, which is pretty deep for a reef fish.
That is, yeah.
And relatively narrow or shallow waters too. They've also been found in mangroves and such.
Okay.
But currently, they've also been found all over the world, particularly the Caribbean, in the Gulf of Mexico, all over the coast of Florida, all the way up to South and North Carolina.
Ruh-roh.
Yeah. Now, why is this a problem? Well, before we get into why it's a problem, for those of you who don't know what a lionfish is, I want you to picture a fish. It is last week I talked about a round, the kakapo was a very round bird. This is a relatively round fish, in my opinion.
It's fair, yeah.
They have a slanted forehead of a face going down, but their body itself is relatively round. They have these maroon, brown, white vertical striping all up and down all over their body. But their fins, all of their fins end in these spines.
Crazy. Yeah.
And those spines have venomous barbs at the end of them. And they can have up to 18 of these spines, which is too many. There are actually 15 different species of lionfish, but I'm just going to talk about them as a bigger group.
I feel like when you say their fins, Rachel, people may be picturing like sort of standard fish fins that have little spikes on the end. And I don't want to give people that impression.
That's fair. You know what? You're right.
They
look
feathers.
Like they stuck. They look like porcupine quills that got stuck on an art project that was a fish. And all of them are like several, like, this isn't short little spines. These are like the
as
length
big as the
of
fish.
the fish.
And to my
Like,
mind, they're almost
long.
kind of feathery too. Like
They look kind of feathery.
Yeah, like it's
I suppose.
one of the
they
weirder
remind me
looking
more
fish.
of like porcupine quills more than anything.
Man.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Don't
they're like
don't undersell those
no.
fins. They are
It goes
the main
from
event.
their forehead, from the top of their head, all the way down
All the
their
way back.
spine.
Yeah.
It includes their back, like tail fin, and then both of their pectoral fins. So the fins that you think of for like flapping around and swimming, those are also covered in spines. So the whole fish is
and
covered
they're
in
like,
spines.
From a frontal view, I'd say like
They look
4/5
spiky.
of the view is fin.
The spine.
Yeah. they're big.
Oof.
Super
now these
cool
aren't
looking.
like necessarily big fish. Like, so the juveniles are only a couple inches, but like they get bigger. They're not like huge fish. They don't get to like several feet or anything like that, but they can get decent size, especially with those spines everywhere.
I mean, two handfuls.
Yeah. 2 handfuls is pretty good. Now, with those spines, though, this is one of the things that really makes them strange, is a lot of fish, they use those spines as deterrent for predators, which makes sense, right? Like, you want to be able to protect yourself. Lionfish in general are relatively slow moving, so they're pretty easy to catch. And not only are they easy to catch, but, I mean, if you're a predator, that means that you're easy to eat. So the spines actually have a venom in them, which is a neuromuscular toxin.
Jeez.
Which isn't great.
No, not great.
People have been stung by them.
What does this do to people?
Great question, Kirk. So people most of the time have been accidentally stung. Lionfish don't attack humans or anything like that. They don't use their spines for hunting purposes. It's painful. The toxicity of a lionfish is the same level as a cobra.
Oh no.
Yeah.
That's I don't like that at all.
No. Now it's rarely fatal. It doesn't get to the level where it's a fatality type thing, but it is so painful. Like it can cause necrosis if left alone and you don't clean it out and things.
Oh,
but
Rachel.
Will cause bruising, swelling, reddening. It will hurt for at least a couple hours. The general advice on the interweb is go to the doctor if you get stung by a lionfish, and they can help you figure it out. Yeah, so it doesn't cause death, but it will hurt, and it's severe pain. But again, it also depends on the depth of the lionfish barb getting into your body. If you happen to be allergic to it, then you really should go to the doctor because it could cause anaphylaxis.
Oh my
which
gosh.
is its own level of not
this
fun.
This just sounds awful, Rachel.
Good. That's my overall vibe when talking about a lionfish, is I want it to sound awful, Kirk.
Well, you're doing a good job. Carry on.
Thank you. We mentioned that they're an invasive... I mentioned that it's an invasive species in the Atlantic. So people have been really creative because these the lionfish that have been introduced, they were because of the pet trade. People couldn't take care of their fish, so they just the ocean and let them loose.
Terrible idea.
Yeah, it happens
because they don't play
too.
they don't play well. It's not like they're just here and with no big deal. Like they're causing problems, right?
They are causing severe problems because lionfish are a generalist. They don't rely on certain amount or certain kinds of food or certain kinds of other fish.
Sure.
So they are devastating all of the other fish populations and a lot of coral reefs.
And coral reefs are hurting right now anyways.
They're hurting anyway. So there's been a wide variety of initiatives to train like sharks who are around to eat lionfish because the sharks on that side of the ocean haven't seen lionfish, so they see the barbs and they're like, I'm not going to eat this.
Oh, I've not heard about that.
Yeah, they're
like training sharks to eat them?
They're showing and trying to train some sharks to eat lionfish because if you can teach a few, then they'll go and teach their like babies or whatever, or like others be like, they'll eat and they'll see, oh, I can eat this. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that cool?
That blows my mind. But I had no idea that was going on.
Oh yeah. They're starting to try to figure out how to like introduce it into the palate of the predators in that ecosystem, which is pretty cool.
Very cool.
But another way people have started to manage the population and learn how to control. Kirk?
Yep.
We're eating lionfish. People are eating lionfish.
That's the one I heard about. Well, in the other side of the world, lionfish is...
Oh, it's absolutely
that's what people eat all the time. So
right.
It's just a matter of developing
more of a thing.
Developing a market for it.
Mm-hmm. So they're not the easiest thing to catch. They're often in like bycatch for like lobster traps and things, but not like on purpose. They just happen to be in the lobster trap when it gets pulled up, kind of thing. In order to catch a lionfish, you either have to spear it, which I think has actually become like a festival in some places.
Wow.
But
save the reef.
It is you can spearfish them and then you can also catch them with hand nets. But you do have to be careful of the spines because that is very, very important.
Yeah.
But they're like very tasty because they are very full of omega-3 fatty acids and they're higher than a lot of other really tasty fish. And because they're an invasive species in that area, there is no bag limits or anything like that. So go nuts, have fun, enjoy.
They're like Pokemon.
Exactly. Gotta catch them all. Oh, well, especially since like they're doing just fine in the Indo-Pacific. Like the lionfish will release several million eggs and then get those fertilized. So it's really not an issue. They are doing just fine. They're generalists for the most part. Oh, yes. So one of the islands in Honduras, local divers are trying to give sharks a taste for lionfish. It hasn't worked well, but they are trying.
They're trying. You gotta try lots of things.
Yeah, so that's what I have for you. I guess if you happen to be in Central America or Florida or North Carolina, try some lionfish. Apparently it's real tasty. I would absolutely try to have some lionfish.
If I ate fish, I would absolutely do that.
I knew you would. That's why I wasn't going to offer you to have any, Kirk, because I know you don't eat fish. But that's what I have for you this week. Lionfish.
Super cool. Thank you.
Yeah. My sources this week were CentralAmerica.com, working with dealing with invasive lionfish in Honduras by Paul McCurdy. And then Healthline actually had a really good article about the lionfish sting.
Oh, sure. It makes sense.
Yeah. And then Wikipedia also had a really great article, had some solid bits of feedback, as well as Fish and Wildlife Service had a really good article about it. Yeah.
Nice. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. that's all I have for y'all. So we're going to take a quick break. And when we return, it'll be Kirk.
September 26th, 1965 seemed like a pretty unremarkable day. I took a look at several online websites that list like all the famous things that happened on a certain day. And September 26th, 1965 comes back with a big fat nothing. Like it seems like
Really?
nothing happened on that day. But I can tell you that that is not the case. When
Okay.
nighttime fell, clouds pushed low and fog covered western Wisconsin. And the timing could not have been worse. September 26th was right in the middle of fall bird migration, and millions upon millions of birds were heading south.
Right.
Now, with cloudy conditions, there were no stars to guide their way. There was no moon. With the fog, even landmarks were difficult to see. Now, birds prefer to migrate sometimes pretty high, up to like 10,000 feet in the sky. But this night, because of the cloud cover, birds were forced lower to the ground. And with all the fog, it was hard to see even when they were down there. They were likely following what few landmarks they could see, and some were no doubt following their internal compasses, which is something we've talked about on the show before.
Right.
And what happened next is both fascinating and tragic. The migrating birds flew past Eau Claire, Wisconsin, and suddenly a light appeared high in the sky. They likely assumed the light was maybe related to the moon, at least instinctually. They were attracted to it, and unfortunately, they could not be more wrong. The light was the steady, bright light atop the wildly tall, 2,000-foot high WEAU TV tower. Now, there weren't any stories on the radio or on TV or in the paper about what happened to the birds once they arrived at the tower. And the only reason I know what happened was because of the last nature center I used to work at. It was called Warner Nature Center. It was in Marina on St. Croix, Minnesota, about 80 miles to the west of Eau Claire, Wisconsin. It's closed down now, but it was the oldest nature center in the state of Minnesota, and it was founded in 1965, the same year as our story. And I know about this story because the nature had an amazing collection of study skins. Now, study skins are preserved animals that have been preserved so they could be studied. They're kind of like taxidermy, but where in taxidermy you want to preserve animals to look as lifelike as possible. When you're doing study skins, you're preserving them for research rather than looks. So in our collection of study skin animals, birds made up most of our collection. There were basically thousands of preserved animals in our collection. Bird study skins are basically just the skin and feathers of the birds that has been basically cut open, turned inside out, cleaned out, stuffed with cotton batting, and then sewn back together and placed on a wooden skewer so they can be handled without damage. Each one is fitted with a small tag that tells where and when it was collected. And as naturalists...
Are these birds in tubes, Kirk?
These are not in tubes. These are just laid out in drawers. We did have some in tubes that we could then have people handle, but these ones were purely in the collection. As naturalists, we could pull these drawers out from these large steel cabinets, and sometimes there'd be a drawer of like just 60 warblers, multiples of each kind.
That's a lot.
That was one drawer, and there were many, many drawers and many, many cabinets. We had thousands of study skins, and it was super, super impressive to go through and look at all these birds. And I'm getting a little bit away from the story I started to tell at the beginning, because one day when I was going through the collection, I noticed something strange. Many, many of the birds, especially a lot of the warblers and things, had the same date on their collection tag.
Oh.
And that date was September 25th, 1965. And the collector was a guy named Briny Fashionbauer. And Briny Fashionbauer was the first director of the Warner Nature Center. And on September 25th, 1965, the Nature Center didn't even have a building yet. And Briny received a phone call to hurry over to Eau Claire, Wisconsin immediately. And when he got there, what he discovered was thousands of dead birds littering the ground under the antenna. in the foggy conditions, the glow from the red light atop the antenna shined out as the only beacon to birds, and they fell into a trance-like state, just circling the antenna until they hit the guy wires, the tower itself, or perhaps simply just died of exhaustion. The glow of antenna lights, one of the things that can also happen is if it's like a foggy night, they can make the fog and all the water vapor in the air glow. And that makes sort of this glowing bubble that outshines everything else in the area and makes everything look even blacker beyond that bubble. And so birds lose all their visual cues and they just circle around inside this bubble, trying to figure out what's going on and why they're in this bubble of light, and they don't really know where to go, and they get very confused. And this can happen when you have these lights on antennas. They become trapped. I was able to find the 1995 report that estimated that between 1957 and 1995, this one television tower, the WEAU in Eau Claire, was responsible for an average of 3,200 bird deaths per year. And a lot of those happened in like big events, not just like a couple a night. Birds are going to run into antennas just randomly. Just you're flying along, it's dark, and boom, you hit something. That can happen. But a lot of these things happen in some of these nights when the weather conditions are just perfect. I was able to find another report that listed off what researchers found at this antenna. It was at a different night. It was the night of September 9th through the 10th in 1962. And I'm just going to read the first dozen or so. This particular night, they counted 865 birds that died in this one night.
Oh my gosh.
279 of them were red-eyed vireos, 98 Tennessee warblers, 73 bay-breasted warblers, 63 chestnut-sided warblers, 50 flycatchers, which, by the way, for the birders listening, you get why that's funny. The researchers did not even bother to break out which kind of flycatcher it was. They just put an asterisk, and at the bottom of the page it says, flycatchers are being saved for further analysis and identification because flycatchers are impossible to ID. And then 31 Connecticut warblers, 28 Blackpoll warblers, 25 Swainson's thrush, 25 veery, 24 ovenbirds, 22 Blackburnian warblers, 19 American redstarts. It just goes on and on and on.
All those were coming towards me, Kirk.
Well, this was in the fall, so they were all leaving. They were all heading south.
Oh, they were all leaving. Got it.
These are neotropical migrants mostly who are heading down toward the tropics. This is just astounding, for one night. I did find, some info from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. They estimate that between 4 and 50 million birds are killed each year by tower kills. So sadly, this isn't really anything special about that one tower. This is something that is repeated around the world. There is a 1962 report in Audubon Field Notes reported 10,000 collision kills that were recorded in 1961. And over 5,000 of that 10,000, so over half of them, were just from that WEAU tower. But they noted, interestingly, that some of the other towers they looked at showed almost no kills. So it's not every tower every night. They were trying to track down more data on why is this happening. That same publication reported in 1964, 33,406 birds killed during one cold front that passed through Minnesota and Ontario. That must just set up just the right conditions for multiple antenna kills at multiple sites. September 1968, 2,000 birds were killed at the WEAU tower during one night of migration. And like I said earlier, it sounds like this WEAU tower is some kind of monster bird killer, right? But the sad truth is that, yes, it was a very tall tower, but there wasn't anything particularly special about it. All towers are capable of creating large kills of birds. Now, this 2,000-foot tall WEAU tower actually collapsed in a winter storm in 2011, so it isn't around anymore. But tower kills are still a huge problem for birds. And I will say, I want to be too much of a downer on this, but research has yielded some positive results on some possible solutions. First off, starting in 2012, a compromise was reached with the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, saying that towers no longer needed to have constantly lit red lights or multiple red lights on them. I know that used to be like the standard. Every tower had those red lights on them, and they didn't blink. They were just a solid red light that was up there. But studies showed that red lights are actually more dangerous to birds than white lights, which is pretty interesting. They also indicated that flashing lights are less deadly to birds than constantly lit lights. So they are recommending that people go with flashing white lights. Flashing white lights seem to attract and trap far fewer birds than constantly lit red lights. Now, there wasn't a mandate that tower owners had to change their lights, but many of them have chosen to start doing that. And as towers age out and have to be replaced, or lighting systems have to be replaced, the new suggestion is for those flashing white lights. And so we are seeing more of those. And I remember when I was a kid, like steady red lights on towers, like that's what you always saw. And as I think about it, I'm like, I don't see quite as many of those
as many
as
either.
I used to. Yeah, so
I used to see a lot more of the white flashers.
Yep,
I
are
do
being
remember
replaced.
seeing red.
Yeah, and that's definitely, since 2012, that's been a concerted effort to save birds. So it's a really cool thing. Now, we do still have a long way to go to keep birds safe. Tower kills are still an issue, and it is estimated that 7,000 new towers go up in the United States every year, which is astounding. Now, some of that probably includes like cell phone towers and stuff too, which are not as high. Many of these are not the 2,000 foot high mega towers. We're not putting as many of those up anymore because those are really for broadcast TV. And, broadcast TV isn't as big a deal as it was before. And we're not trying to like usually cover as large of an area with one TV signal when you can get by with a bunch of smaller towers that are generally sometimes cheaper to build, cheaper to maintain, safer for birds, all that kind of stuff. So there is some change happening in that. But yeah, like I said, Fish and Wildlife still reports somewhere between 4 and 50 million birds are being killed every single year by towers. So I'm hopeful that we're moving in the right direction and researchers are going to be able to figure out how to help birds avoid them, because it's just one of the, strangest things. It's that birds get caught up in these lights. And no, it is not just towers. This amazing phenomenon of migration can be messed up by lots of stuff. Skyscrapers, lighthouses, wind turbines, lots of things can mess it up. But the research does show that towers are the number one killer for birds during migration when it comes to, human intervention. So they are still very much a problem, and, we're working on solutions. But
that's good.
Yep. It's, that's really what I got. Look, I don't want,
that's kind a big downer there, Kirk.
It is. I mean, I'm the fact that we are finding solutions and we can find solutions, I think is really good.
That's awesome.
Another example of this, which is not a tower in a traditional sense though, is when the Twin Towers came down in New York City, they put a memorial of these two towers of light. They basically use searchlights to sort of recreate the look of the towers. And they discovered during migration, when they had that on, thousands and thousands and thousands of birds were getting trapped in those lights. And they could look up through the beams when the workers were there and to see giant clouds of birds that were trapped in these lights. And they've now instituted a method to be able to turn the lights off for a certain amount of time. I don't know if it's per night or per hour or whatever it is. They turn the lights off, let the birds all go on their way, and then turn them back on, and then slowly new birds migrating in fill it up. And once it's full of birds, to turn the lights off again to kind of let the birds go on their way. So people are starting to think about, birds and migration and what we can do to make it easier for them. It is, migration is one of the strangest phenomenon on Earth. And anything we can do to help facilitate birds through this incredibly difficult and arduous journey they have to go on, I feel like it's just really our duty to do that. Because, man, we don't really need to be losing millions of birds a year to something that we can probably, solve. We can
turn off a light. Yeah.
And they're having campaigns to get, cities, some of the major cities there, especially in flyways like Minneapolis, which is right on the Mississippi River. Some of these cities are in big flyways to say, hey, you know what? Like your beautiful skyline you have lit up at night, it looks really nice, but we don't need to see it at 3 a.m. So sure, have downtown lit up while people are driving in for the evening, and it looks neat. And then bar time comes and everybody goes home. And once everybody's home, go ahead and turn the lights out on the top of the skyscrapers.
If anything, that would make more sense too, like energy wise. Like it has to save some money at least.
Absolutely. And what is good for saving energy is good for birds when it comes to reducing light pollution and reducing some of these barriers to them successfully migrating. So there's been big campaigns around that. We're not 100% there yet, but a lot of cities have agreed to turn their lights off at night, at least during migration, which is when it's mostly a problem. And especially on cloudy nights, like foggy nights.
Oh my goodness, yeah. Which is good.
Absolutely. Onward and upward. Got to keep on helping our animal friends.
Thanks,
Rachel,
Kirk.
yeah, two very different stories. And we went all the way from the ocean to the skies.
Wild times.
Yeah. I'm excited, Rachel, because next week Victoria is back with us
Woohoo!
for a 2-week run. And we're going to have her adding in, she always comes to us with all these delightful stories that she's been cooking
I never
up while
know
she's away,
exactly.
so.
I mean, I never know what any of us are bringing to the table every week, but sometimes, like, Victoria just brings some of those real special stories. Not gonna lie.
She sure does. Well, you know what? If we have to wait a week to find out, but those of you who are listening, if you're just catching up, you can click the next episode right now if it's already out. But if you're listening in a timely manner, we'll see you next week, and thanks so much for being here.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks everyone for listening to today's show. Be sure to subscribe. New episodes drop every Wednesday, and we love sharing this strange world with all of our listeners. If you would be so kind as to leave us a 5-star review, that would be great. It lets other lovers of the strange discover the show. You can reach out to us on social media by searching for Strange by Nature Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can send us an email as well. Our address is contact@strangebynaturepodcast.com. If you want more information about the show, you can also check out our website, which is strangebynaturepodcast.com. Until next week, get outside, stay curious, and embrace the strange.